very disappointing season. We had talked a little bit the other day when Chris Ilitch announced that I was going to come back on a 2-year contract, that certainly the theme going forward is the future. It's rebuild. It's young kids, but young kids put into the lineup when they are ready to play at this level, not before. Certainly, I believe that you need to have some veterans on the hockey club that are good role models. We've got those, and I think I was on the radio here with Matt Shepard a week ago or 10 days ago, and we talked, and I said that, if you look at our roster, we have lots of players that have a year or two to go in their contract, so it's an opportunity for some of our young players that aren't quite ready to take the necessary time, but certainly there's opportunity on our team going forward. The only other thing I would say, I guess, basically from a coaching standpoint, you guys are going to ask me, I've decided I'm going to bring back Jeff Blashill for another year. I thought the team played hard till the finish. I'm hoping that 2, 3, 4 young players in our system make the team. He did a good job with the young players in Grand Rapids when he was the coach there. I thought this year at the, you look at the impact of Bertuzzi and Larkin and the development and the importance that they had on the team this year, they improved as players. So I'm open for questions.
And the overripe philosophy that the Red Wings have always adopted, are you still going to try to, I know you said they have to earn it, but do you think that it might be a little more baptism under fire to see if they can actually play in the league as opposed to just keeping them down in Grand Rapids?
Well, first off, I'm not going to do overripe. Part of when we did, certainly when we did, the overripe, and I used to have that conversation with Mike Babcock back in the back rooms, and then Mike would come out and say, "Oh, the manager said overripe," and now I got to deal with overripe. So. I would say, it depends on where your team is at, and certainly when we were getting 100+ points and we had players in there that were in the prime of their career, we left players down for a little bit longer in the American League, and I'm not really sure that it really hurt them. That's not who we are today. That's not who the Detroit Red Wings are today. So I don't want to put a young player up here that's not ready, because you have, I look at a guy like a Dan Cleary, who was the 13th overall pick, and we got him at the age of 25 after he'd been through 3 organizations, and he had to really revive his career here at the age of 25. So, it's and not, I put Dylan Larkin on the team. He didn't go to the American League. Athanasiou played a year and a half, and we put him on the National Hockey League team. We put Mantha 2 years in the American Hockey League, and he was up here. We're going to give Rasmussen a chance to make the team next year. So I don't know that there's any just one specific blueprint. I think you have to look at the player. They have to be physically, mentally ready to play in this league and have a bit of a resume. Just because you're born in 1997 doesn't mean that you can play in the National Hockey League. There has to be a resume that goes with that age. Whether that resume is in junior, college, Europe, or the American League.
There are examples across the league. You mentioned we see them of bottoming out and then resting in the bottom for too long because you don't hit on picks. But the teams that are winning and that have won, since the Cap's been here more often than not, have bottomed out. Do you try to do that, or do you always want veterans around for that culture that you speak of? Is there consideration completely?
I don't know how much lower we can go to bottom out. When we were 5th from the bottom. So there's only 4 teams below us. So I would say to you that last year we had the 7th, I think we had the 7th odds going into the draft. We ended up going back 2 spots. So 2 years in a row we're 7th and 5th. Now you go into a lottery. So, I guess for 2 years right now we've bottomed out. I don't know. We're going to see what
by bringing veterans around and always having those players with.
Well, the players in there that are under contract. I mean, obviously, I've got to honor the contracts that I've signed. You go around, some people will say, many of you in the room, they got signed bad contracts. Let's say you're right. I got to honor the contracts. And I think if you're in the business long enough, lots of people have contracts that it's the nature of the industry. So as you go forward, not every contract that you sign is going to be a team-friendly contract. Not every contract you sign is going to work out, whether it's in this sport or in lots of other sports. So I think that I feel that the veterans that we've got in there, the reason that I signed them is they're first off, they were, in their prime, they were good players and they brought an element to the team. Father Time has banged away a little bit, but they're good people. They play hard, and under the terms, there's a the back of my desk. There's a CBA. There's rules and regulations on how we run a team, and I've got to manage the team within those rules. So, I don't. You can look around. I don't know that the answer is just to throw 20 kids out there between the age of 19 and 23 and say go at it. It's been tried. It's been tried in the league and hasn't worked. So it's having a balance of having some veterans in there, and even if you're not as competitive as you like to be, it's making sure that your young players have some people to look up to as role models, as mentors, as people that they kind of respect of what they've accomplished throughout their career, to seeing at how they go about their business on an everyday basis. The goal is to build a team here that can legitimately compete for the Stanley Cup. That's the goal. I'm jumping around, I guess I would say to you, forget anything that happened before 2005. That was a different world. But 2005, 2006, they come up with a system that's a salary cap system. And from 2005-06 to 2015, we won 2 President's Trophies, I think. I know we went to the Final Four 3 times. We went to the finals twice. We won a Stanley Cup. We had 100 points in 2015. But those players in 2005, 6, 7, 8, that were Hudler, Filppula, Franson, Zetterberg, Datsuk, Eriksson, Father Time. Lots of them are not even in there. The ones that are in there, they're now 10 years older. So what we've done is, in my mind, up 2015, we went on a trip in the month of February. We went on a West Coast trip. We weren't sure how good we were. We had 100 points that year, and we went 4-1-1. And I talked to Mike Babcock, and we felt that if we could make a couple of tweaks, we had a chance to go on a playoff run. We spent some futures. We brought in Eric Cole. We brought in Merit Zedlicki. And unfortunately, after being up 3-2 against Tampa, we couldn't get the job done. From that point in time, in my mind, for me, haven't traded any draft picks. Haven't traded players that I think could be a part of the solution here. Last summer, went out and signed Trevor Daley. I thought that if we could get our back end a little bit deeper, that we could be more competitive and be in the hunt for a playoff spot. I think Trevor played really good for us. I think he did everything we had hoped, but we're in the same spot this year as we were last year. So that's why at the trade deadline, I traded away Thomas Tatar, got 3 draft picks. Certainly last year, the trade deadline, we traded away some players to get some draft picks. I've tried to acquire some draft picks. I'm trying to speed the process up. Going to build through the draft. Now, I got to do other things besides build through the draft. But for right now, for the last year and a half, try to acquire futures, try to acquire more picks. Now we've got to turn those picks into players. But there's lots of stories of you can do that thing and it can go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And you just got to look around the league. It's tough. So now I've got to figure out as we go forward over the next 12 to 18 months, get the training. Obviously, you're going to get into summer. We're going to make some moves. The theme is going to be rebuild. The theme is going to be youth. The theme is going to be putting some young players onto the team. I'm going to go out. Jeff Blashill's going out tomorrow to watch Chalowski play a game, to watch Rasmussen a game. We're going to go to Grand Rapids, and we'll watch. I'm going to watch Hronek play and Svechnikov play, and the players down there, and the guy that where do we fit in the lottery, and who are we getting in the lottery? Can that player come in? Can he make our team? So at the end of the day, I'm hoping and expecting that minimum of 2, maybe 4 or 5 kids between the age of 19 and 22 are on the roster next year that weren't on the team to start this year. That's all fine and well. At the end of the day, Red Wing fans want this team to win. They want it to be competitive. They want it to compete. So I'm going younger. I want to get those young people onto this roster when I think that they can help us be competitive. If not, if they're best served to be somewhere else for a little period of time, then I'll try to make do until those players are ready. I don't know if I answered your question, but
And Ken, what about value for value trades?
pardon me?
Yeah, value for value trades. Trade a player the same age, about the same contract status, same thing. If you want this player to fit you, and
Yeah.
you look at a lot of teams in the playoffs, and that's different for Nashville and their reboot, New Jersey,
Yeah.
all some of those
Yeah.
things. Is that part of what the process is? Because you haven't done that for quite a while.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've done a lot of it. I think that, when we were up there, you're always trading futures for now, and now we're certainly have traded lots of players away for draft picks. I'd love to do a value for value deal.
What about unrestricted free agency? Will you be active, or do you, because you have like Mantha, Larkin, you have a lot of things
Yeah.
to do this summer, so could you expect maybe to add at least another veteran?
Depends who's on the market.
Could you assess the market right now? Do you think it's,
Well, I mean, I can't talk any specific names.
no, that I know.
I think, do I see us going out and signing a 28-year-old player that's an NHL player? Probably not really. Now, if it depends on the term too. It depends on the term. I mean, I think again. I think that we haven't had a good year at all. But there are NHL players in that locker room. So I'm looking for players that you can bring, and they're gonna bring a dimension to make you better. They're gonna upgrade you, and if they don't upgrade you, I'm not gonna commit to some players. I'm gonna sit and wait for some of the kids. But eventually, I do have to make a trade player for player. Eventually, we do have to get in the open market. I can't just sit. For right now, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to put together lots of young players that give this franchise and give our fans some hope. And then as we start to get some hope, and I can't put a time frame on it, but as we start to get some hope, then I got to start to make a player for a player trade to maybe he doesn't fill a dimension over there, but it's a player for player trade. And somewhere along the line, if you're going to be good, I got to be involved in free agency. We don't go to the finals in 2009 if you don't have Marian Hossa here, and certainly don't. I did a deal for Dominic Hasek in 2002 and value for value trade. So right now I'm in the process. I'm trying to rebuild. I'm trying to spend a period of time here. That's why we went at the trade deadline. We got 2 firsts, we got 2 seconds. The reality is we've probably got 2 NHL drafts ahead of us, right? We got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 thirds. Usually you get 1 first, 1 second, 1 third. So I'm trying to speed up the process in getting this organization. I spent a lot of years when we were trying to win, spending future assets. Now we're at the bottom of the cycle, and I'm trying to spend a little period of time here acquiring futures.
Ken, you got a nice group of young forwards that have a lot of promise, but as far as defense, how much of a concern is that you don't have the same type of young defenseman maybe coming up, and can this defense be much better? Can you take a next step? It comes back largely intact next year?
Well, I think answer our defense is old. I mean, it's and the reason it's old is that there hasn't been. It's not like there's been some young defensemen that we've tried drafting some defensemen, and I think you're talking. Certainly, I'm talking about those defensemen that I use the word high impact. I can get players to play. High impact defensemen. We haven't done a good job at drafting defensemen that have gone on the team and been a high impact. So, went out and we signed Brian Rafalski, and when we had the car accident in the 90s, we went out and traded 3 firsts basically for Chris Chelios and traded a 2nd round pick for Brad Stewart. the last couple of years, we used a first-round pick on Chalowski. We used a second on Ironic. We used a third on Saryarvi. Last year, we used a second on Lindstrom. We got 2 firsts, 2 seconds. I would anticipate that some of those 4 picks and the 3/3, some of those picks are going to be used on defense. You got to draft it. You got to draft them, and you got to develop them. Those teams, you saw last year at the expansion draft, there was a lot of speculation that some teams had some issues keeping their defensemen. They were going to. Well, at the end of the day, they most of them all paid a price in order to hang on to their defense. So defensemen are coveted in this league. And those defensemen that you're talking about, I don't think you're just talking about a defenseman that can play in the league. I think you're talking about a defenseman that can make a difference. We got to draft them, and we've got to develop them.
You mentioned that Jeff Bledsoe is going on some scouting trips the next few days. Should we read anything that he made a decision that he is coming back or not?
Oh, I thought he said, yeah, he is coming back. Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Okay, where's Jeff progressed or improved over these last 3 years?
Well, first off, I don't know. I'm big on experience. He's going in. He's had 3 years as an NHL head coach, and it's 3 years of experience. And I know in dealing with him every day that I just had a conversation in there with one of the young players, and who played in the American League last year, and was telling me how his perception of the NHL when he was at the American League, and now when he got to the NHL and played here, it's totally different. What a different animal the National Hockey League is than even the American League. And I'm talking about a guy that had success at the American League level. So I think that in Jeff's case, you're in the American Hockey League, you have success. It's going to take you, some of those people that have success, and that's why I think when you're a fan out there, you see somebody having success at this level, bring them up. The National Hockey League is a whole different ball game. So I think in Jeff's case, he's got 3 years of experience. Some of those ideas that he might have had when he became an NHL head coach, with the success that he had in the American Hockey League, the success that he had in college, the success that he had in junior hockey, this is a totally different set of circumstances. And I think that experience he's been in, the team played hard right till the end. We were really, we'd been out of it for unless we went on a massive 1, 7 or 8 or 9 in a row. We really just sort of stayed behind. Then we lost about 9 in a row in March, and we fell. The bottom fell out. But I thought even when we lost 9 in a row, we lost a lot of games by a goal. They played hard. I thought that the young kids that have been brought up they improved. He played them. They were important. They got minutes. And I think that the experience of 3 years in the National Hockey League, he's been a guy that's had success along the way. There's a reason for him to continue to be the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
And you've got 3 young forwards that need contracts, and
Yeah.
obviously Larkin and Mantha. What's going to be your approach with those guys
In terms of signing him?
Yeah. Like, do you want to get those? Do you prefer long-term deals to kind of get some cost certainty? Or are you still kind of a bridge? Like, is it different each case?
I think it's different each case. I guess I would say to you, I'm open. I'm open to talking. Obviously, it takes 2 to make a deal. I'm open to looking forward to talking to their agents. And at the end of the day, Craig, when I go into a negotiation, and the other side too, you find comparable. Do they have? What's their leverage? Do they have arbitration rights? Do they not have arbitration rights? And that's a bit of a factor in the negotiation. And then you look at statistics and ice time, and you look at comparables, and you try to come up with a group of people that you think is a fair comparable. And I'm trying to find probably a group of comparables that are on the lower end, and they're trying to find a group of comparables on the higher end, and then you sort of go to work, and whether it's and then it's the term. So I think with those guys, I got to sit down and find some comparables. We've already obviously started the process internally, but I got to sit down with those players' agents here in the next couple of months and go to work on it. But you're going to find a solution. You have to find a solution. Now, certainly in Athanasiou's case last year, the solution didn't come until late October, early November. Now, Andreas has arbitration rights, so that's obviously a factor where he didn't have that last year. So that's one situation. Going to try to find a deal that's fair for the player and fair for the club.
In the case of Dylan Larkin, is it fair to say he might be separate in terms of he's a guy that you've identified as potentially core guy, his contemporaries who sign those long-term deals? Is he maybe a different case?
Well, in terms of, I'm a big Dylan fan. I think he's everything. I think he plays with a lot of passion, a lot of will, a lot of desire. He's learned, in 3 years. And I just talked to him a little bit this morning. Defensively, he's better defensively on the puck. His face-off, he wants to be a good player. He wants to be a good player. He grabs information, and he digests it, and he wants to be a good player. And you look at where he was at, over the 3 years. Obviously, the first year he started out on the left wing to playing with Z to kind of take away his defensive zone responsibility so he could just get into the NHL and have success. And he had, I think, 24, 25 goals. And then he had a struggle year 2 for the first 40 games. But I think struggles are good. In the development of people, in the development of players, I think adversity is good. And that adversity, it turned out to be a good thing because some of the things that he was doing, the league had adjusted to it, and he started to figure out that he needed to adjust. And I think this year, he had a great year. He played 200-foot game. He was much better defensively. Face-off, he's around 50%. He was playing 18 minutes a night. So I'm a big Dylan Larkin fan. I on and off the ice. I think he's a really, really, really important player to this franchise. And he's 21, turns 22 in July. So, he's very relatively young. So I'm open. I want to sit down and see what they're thinking. What they're thinking. But I want to find a deal that's fair for Dylan and fair for us, based upon the comparables.
Can we consider Colorado did go 48 points to make the playoffs? Granted, they had McKinnon. That makes it a little easier. Does that give you hope that it can be turned around quick like they did?
Stoney, I would say to you that love to do that. Certainly, they kept the manager, they kept the coach. I don't even know if they, I'm not sure. I haven't analyzed them, over here the next couple of months. But certainly, they're a great story. They went from dead last in the league to they're getting ready for a playoff series tomorrow night. So certainly, we'd love to have that story happen. For now, I'm going to really focus in on the future. Got to have, as a manager, got to have long-term plans and short-term plans. And right now I'm focusing in on the long-term plan. As we work our way to the draft, I'm going to focus in on the shorter-term plan. And not the draft, but the time at the draft when I'm working the phones to see what other people are thinking out there, and then working your way into July 1st to free agency to see if there's a player out there that we think can make us better at a price that we're satisfied with. But ultimately, it's about the youth. It's about it's not about the youth for 5 or 6 years, but I think it's about the youth here for a short period of time until we can have a group of players, a foundation of players that we think are going to be NHL players. I think we've got some on the roster. We've got some in the system. We're going to add some more at this year's draft, and then I've got to go to all these other plans.
Ken, in terms of scouting and development,
Okay, sorry, John.
the ownership's talked a lot about the investment they made there with the Tigers, whether it's scouting, analytics, et cetera. What kind of things are you guys doing differently? Are you attacking this differently, given how much of your future maybe depends on this draft?
Are you talking drafting, developing, or both? Both. I would say to you in drafting, I mean, obviously, drafting, for the most part, you're going to have similar scouts. Like, teams aren't going to change their... Like, the scouting staff that I've got really, Jim Nill, how long has he been in Dallas now? 5, 6 years, maybe? 5 years. So when Jim left, Jim took 2 of the scouts with him, and then last year, another scout went with him. So basically, the scouting staff that we had 5 years ago, for the most part, was almost overall. The staff we've got now is relatively. They started with the Larkin draft, Tyler Wright. We're beating up. Discussing internally on an everyday basis how we can be better, whether it's through coverage, obviously evaluating what players have success, what players don't have success, not only the ones that we draft, but the players that are out there. How do we want to build our team? And I would say to you that we have drafted lots of bigger players. I think, there's some really good smaller teams in the National Hockey League, and there's some really good bigger teams. I don't know that there's one way to build your team. When it comes to player development, obviously, Yuri Fisher they got a brand new guy 2 years ago in player development. Sean Horkov, I brought in Dan Cleary this year. Hork's got, I don't know if it's Peps or Peds, but it's we've had those people in at the development camp. We had them in a training camp. We're trying to work on improving the skill level of the players that we've drafted. I got Brian Campbell's been here for 3 years in analytics. We're trying to look at analytics. I give a project to Jeff that works in video, and he's going to do some analytics and some video on who we think are the top 10 players we haven't done that before. So is there something in there through video, through analytics, through numbers? So we're trying to do things a little bit differently.
Ken, what's your interest level in Mike Green, and do you have any update on how his surgery went?
Update on Mike Green, head surgery. It was a success. I anticipate that he will be 100% for training camp. Basically, what he had get a little bit something that would push every now and then, and they had to kind of shave it down a little bit. So it's nothing significant, but it's significant enough that it affected his ability to play. Going to see here over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, see how he's feeling, and then I want to get to our I want to talk to my people with our pro scouting meetings. I want to watch some games. Let's see where we pick in the lottery. Or what pick we get in the lottery in the NHL draft, and then the next month I'll make a decision.
Okay, do you fully expect Croner and Zetterberg to be back? It sounded like they were going to be back.
Did they? I haven't talked to them yet. Some of you might be telling me news. Yeah.
And any changes on the bench at all, or no such heavy?
We'll see.
And many business,
What's that, Greg?
many business decisions go into building a new building. And with all due respect, was there a concern about diving deeper into the rebuild because the team was moving to a new building and concern about losing too many games as a result of rebuilding?
Greg, you got to. I apologize. I'm not really. So basically.
Probably not well stated.
Yeah. So basically, what
Did you hold off on the rebuild, worrying that if you rebuilt too quickly, there would be too many losses while you...
Oh, are you talking? You're talking about timing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so. In 2015, Greg, we had 100 points. Now, Zetterberg's on the team, Datsuk's on the team, Cromwell's on the team. They're younger than they are today. It would be like looking at a team out there in the league today that got 100 points and think that this summer they should go into a rebuild. I guess I've lived it. I lived a rebuild. I became a scout for the Detroit Red Wings in 1985-86, and we had the first pick in the draft, Joe Murphy, and we won the Cup in 1997. I've lived it. It's not like I've just read a book about it. I've lived it. I've been out in the beat. I've watched players from 85 to 1997 for 12 years. I was an amateur scout, Western amateur. I was a chief scout. I've lived it. So, once I guess what I'm, as long as you think you got a chance, you want to try to win. You want to try to win. And I guess your question would be, did you wait too long? Did you wait too long? I don't think so, because at the end of the day, you'd have been living it 2 years ago, and you'd have been asking me the same question 2 years ago. Like, you got to live it. You're going to have to live it. And as you look around the National Hockey League, most franchises have lived it. They've lived a rebuild or lived a down period, and we had a wonderful, wonderful run for 25 years. And even if you don't want to call it 25, if you think that, to your point, if you think that the run should have been 22 years and we should have started sooner, it was still a wonderful run. And the reality is that all those teams that were our peers in the late 90s and early 2000s, and then you go into the late 2000s, they've either lived it before or after, they're living it now. It's the rules. It's the salary cap world. You get a period of time at the top. The players grow old. You go to an entry draft, and Gary Bettman's up front, and there's row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and for a long period of time we sat in row 4, and the draft would start at 7 o'clock, and we'd make a pick 2.5 hours later. And sometimes we didn't make a pick because they traded the pick. We were trying to win. I paid a price. We paid a price. So whether you said it shouldn't have started in 2015, I should have started this in 2013, still going to have to live it. Then you would have lived it from 2013 to 2017. Now it's 2015. There's going to be a period of time that a franchise needs to rebuild. And you're talking about different years, and I'm just saying, what's the difference? At the end of the day, you're going to have to live it. You're going to have to live a period of time where you try to rebuild. And Fortunately, or I don't know, I give you that period from 2005 to 2015. We were the last team to miss the playoffs in a salary cap world. Every team in the league missed the playoffs in the salary cap world. We were the last team. During that 10 years, we won a championship. We went to the finals twice, and at the end, we from 2000 and I think it was 7 to 2013, in a 7-year period, 6 of the years we went to the second round or further. There's your run. There's your run. There's your run. And we tried to milk it a little bit longer. We got to 2015. We had 2014, obviously, Zetterberg in the Olympics went down with back surgery, and Pav had knee surgery. We come back. We played a high-powered, high-octane team in Boston, and went out in 5 games. We weren't good enough. We weren't ready to beat that team. And the next year we had 100 points, and we had Tampa down 3-2, and we couldn't get the job done. They were better than we were. They went to the finals. And from that point forward, in my mind, now when I come in here, in 2015, I'm talking about we're going to try to go. But the moves I made for the most part have been for the futures, or they've been to hang on to draft picks and be conservative. I don't think I did anything at the 2016 draft. I was trade deadline. We lost in 5 games to Tampa Bay. So I guess my answer to your question is, I think you and I are the same. You're wondering if I should have started sooner, started later, and I'm saying to you, what difference does it make? Like the reality is, you're going to have to live it at every franchise is going to have to live it at some period in time. And as you look around the league, there's other franchises that are probably in a similar situation to we are. You get a run at the top, and then you got to spend a period of time rebuilding. And we're going to try to get this thing back up and running as quickly as possible.
And Ken, along those same lines, when the extension was made on Saturday, there was a large group of the fan base. So we're in the radio, you hear from a lot of them that were not happy that you were coming back for 2 years. Do you have a message to those fans, or is it just rebuild, develop, and do your best to kind of get back to contending for a cup?
I feel their pain. I've been a Red Wing since 1983. Lived here since 1994. I respect their passion. I understand their frustration. I understand their disappointment. I understand that why they would have those feelings, and I guess it's up to me and my people to prove that the plan that we've got is a good plan. It's a good plan for them, and I don't know. I guess I think I pretty well said it all. I understand exactly where they're coming from. They're disappointed. I understand their disappointment. I understand their frustration.
Ken, Jimmy would play every game
Jimmy,
Jimmy Holland.
yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, is there a goaltender in the organization now that is capable of being his backup next year, or will you have to address that?
No, I don't think we got anybody signed, do we? Like, I mean, obviously Mrazek's, I mean, Crow's deal is up, McCullum's deal is up, Machovsky's deal is up. No, we've got some young goaltenders in the system that we think have potential. Larson, a fifth-round pick that played this year in the USHL, I believe he's going to play in Denver next year. He's got to qualify through writing tests. Padelberg, who played for the Swiss World Junior Team a year ago, played in the Swiss Elite League. But we're going to have to obviously go out and look on the open market, and we're going to have to sign some goaltenders.
Ken, Mantha took big strides.
Yeah.
Was he more receptive to Blashill's coaching, you think, and how has that relationship grown?
Well, when you say, I think that, and I talked to Anthony today. When he scored 80 goals his last year as junior, you'd score lots of goals off the rush, and you'd come down and you'd shoot the puck in the net, and that's not this league, as we can see. There are guys that score 40 plus, but it's a hard league. So I think that he went to the American League and he's learned to cycle more, learned to be heavier on the puck, learned to compete harder. He's learned to, when you turn the puck over in the National Hockey League in the offensive zone, you're usually going back to your D zone to do D zone coverage. They don't give it back to you in junior and college. You might make a mistake and they give it back to you. So he's learning to protect the puck. He's learning to respect the opposition. He's learning to do all those things. And I think it's ultimately why he had 24 goals and 24 assists and 48 points. I think Anthony's, 23, 21. I think 23 will be 24 next year. So he had a good year. And obviously the video work that the coaching staff does with him and all players on a regular basis, challenging him. Sometimes you pull the ice time back. Sometimes you play him more when they're really going good. Watching the veteran players in the locker room have all added up to him being who he is today. And I think he had a good year. We need him to take a step. He's got that potential, that ability to take a step. That's what I talked to him about today. And it's the other player that I talked to, the young guy was talking about how tough the league is. But once you get in the league and you play 100 games, you've got an idea what this league is all about. So certainly Anthony's played, 100 plus games, and he's got a good idea this summertime heading into training camp what he needs to do to take his game to another level.
And any appetite, kind of along John's question, to maybe add an outside voice in the front office or doing any restructuring front office or
Yeah, I'm open to anything. The answer is yes, yeah. The answer is yes.
departments or areas that you're focused on?
No, I guess I would. No, I think that there was a period of time here. Obviously, Jim Devillano lived in Detroit. He doesn't anymore. I had Jim Nill here. I had Ryan Martin here. I had Steve. Steve retired and brought him on board. Scotty Bowman was a consultant, so I obviously had more voices, and we had a lot of success. We won the cup in 2008, and we 2009 we lost in the finals. You lose people. That's the reality. When you have success, people get opportunities elsewhere because you've had success. And certainly it gave an opportunity to Ryan Martin. He's done a great job in his evolution and development as a young executive. Runs Grand Rapids, does a fabulous job. Could we use another person that's got that experience to join us? Certainly something that I'm considering and thinking about. I've added, like I said, Dan Cleary and Director of Player Development, so we've gone from player development from one person to two people. But that would be the one area I think. Now at the end of the day, Craig, you gotta You got to find the right people, right? But certainly I would be open to adding somebody.
The teams you talked about that made the runs, and you said everybody dips and goes. When the rebuilds happen, more often than not, there's new management. You have been the guy that will be here to guide this new rebuild. In your mind, how do you picture the end? What do you see?
The end of the rebuild?
Yeah, where's
Holding the Stanley Cup over our head. That's the end of the rebuild, I think.
How often do you picture that?
That's the goal. That's my ultimate goal. You know, I'd love to be part of another Stanley Cup championship team. I understand. I think all Red Wing fans do. I mean, how we lived from 1985 to 1997. You know, and we probably were a cup contender. You can be a cup contender and never win the cup. There's teams have been in this. There's good teams for a long time. They've been in this league for, you know, they've been around in this league for 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 years, and they haven't won a Stanley Cup. It's hard to win. It's hard to win. So, you know, I guess what's the goal? The goal is to build a team that our fans, that our media, that media elsewhere think is a legitimate cup contender. And you know, as you look at the 16 teams in the playoffs now, I don't know what you'd want to identify, 6, 8, 9, 10 of them. I don't know. You'd make your pick. What you think are legitimate cup. It's all 16. I don't know, but certainly that's the goal, to build a team that's going to be in the playoffs. When the articles come out in September and all the experts weigh in on who's going to be where, that they're predicting that your team is going to be in the playoffs. And if you don't make the playoffs, it's a bit of a surprise. That I'm trying to build the foundation, lay the foundation of that kind of a team.
Can time frame for being back in contention? I know it's
Define contention.
playoff contention. In your mind, do you have a fair?
Well, I'd like to, I mean, I'd like to think that in a playoff contention, you're hoping in a year or two. I mean, I think that's what you're hoping. Now, Bojo, depends, you know, like what goes on in the lottery, you know, the year, what goes on in free agency, and you know, I look at the year that in 2009 when we played Chicago in the Final Four, and obviously Marian Hossa made a decision to go to Chicago. That helped that program. So I think what I'm saying to you is right now we need good young players and lots of good young players, and been trying to work at that, trying to acquire picks. Next up is going to be to try to supplement them, complement them, to bring in some players that are a little bit more experienced or different, or make a trade that will make us different, make us better, and compete for a playoff. But I'd like to think a year or two, but like I said to you, there's teams that miss. You can run off 6, 7, 8, 9 years in a row missing the playoffs. There's lots of examples. It's hard. It's a hard league. You know, basically half the teams miss the playoffs.
How far off do you think that legitimate Stanley Cup contention is?
I'm not putting a time frame on that. I think I did that 2 years ago and people laughed at me, so I'm not putting a time frame on that.
One more question.
Who are you sending to the draft lottery?
Dan Cleary's going to be one. I think he's going to sit in the back room, and then either Tyler Wright or myself. Good. Thanks, guys.